Welcome to Fantasia, home of the Melodious. My name's Azallea, and today, gonna be bringing you guys another update to my Trickstar deck. So without any further ado, let's just jump right into this. So starting off, we're gonna be playing 3 copies of Trickstar Candina, and of course she is a staple in any Trickstar build because when she's normal summoned, you can just search out another Trickstar card. So we're also playing 3 copies of Trickstar Lycoris because she is amazing for being able to just recur like your Candina, so you can go ahead and use her next turn. And she's the best Trickstar in my opinion to go ahead and use for things like link fodder and stuff like that, because you can easily just recur from the graveyard and all that good stuff. And the card that's doing most of the recurring is going to be 1 copy of Trickstar Lilybell. This is pretty standard ratio for like most Trickstar decks, even the competitive versions of this deck. Some people might opt to run like 2 Lilybells, but personally I think 1 is completely fine in this build. So yeah, that is it for the Trickstars. Next off, I'm going to go into some of like the engines that we run in this deck. So we're playing 3 copies of Lone Fire Blossom, and Lone Fire Blossom is of course here because we run the Predaplant engine, if you couldn't tell from the title of the video. So we're playing 3 copies of Predaplant Orifice Scorpio and 2 copies of Predaplant Darlingtonia Cobra. So I choose to play 2 copies of Cobra because this deck revolves a lot around searching your fusion spells. So things like Brilliant Fusion, Instant Fusion, Defusion, and all that good stuff. And I'll get into that when we get into the spell cards. But I really like the fact that even if you draw 1 copy of Cobra, you're still always going to have another copy in your deck so that your Scorpio is going to be live. Because if you do happen to draw into this 1 Cobra, it shuts down your Scorpio and your Lone Fires and turns them all into dead draws, essentially. So that's why that's at 2. And the cards that I'm going to be sending off cards like Brilliant Fusion are going to be 1 copy of Arc Lord Christia and 1 copy of Performage Trick Clown. And the cards that you're going to summon off of things like your MX Saber Invoker are going to be your 1 copy of Heroic Challenge Thousand Blades. And of course 1 copy of Gem Knight Garnet is here for the Brilliant Fusion. So you guys might be wondering, okay, why are you playing Christia in this deck? That's really weird. Christia is actually fantastic in Brilliant builds, and it just amazes me, it baffles me that nobody plays this, probably because it's really inconsistent, to be honest, but Christia can be sent off of Brilliant Fusion. It's a light, it's a light target, excuse me, and you can send it with your Garnet, of course. Then what you would do is you would search out your Defusion. So if you open like Brilliant Fusion and like your Predaplant combo, essentially, you can search out a copy of Defusion, and then you can defuse your Seraphonite into your Christia and your Garnet, basically just putting a free Christia on the field and locking your opponent out of doing their shenanigans. And of course, if you draw into Christia, you can always discard her with the effects of like Scorpio and whatnot, but your Trickstar monsters here are all light fairy type monsters, so they're very easy to summon out your Arc Lord Christia with. Seraphonite as well, she's also a fairy type monster, adds to the count, so you can actually summon her with your own effect. And it comes up sometimes, but not really too often, because like this fusion engine thing that's going on is very, very consistent. And the 2 main goals of this deck is either to pump out Christia or to pump out like Crystal Wing with like Decode Talker and a rank 4. So you're just putting a lot of negation and disruption on your side of the field to go ahead and just basically shut down your opponent when they try to go on their turn. Alright, but yeah, that does it for all of these cards right here. It's a lot, it's a mess, essentially. But they really do the job well, and they're very, very consistent. As you can see, it's very streamlined, the deck is, gearing towards creating the feels that I just described earlier. Okay, so the next 3 cards that we play are going to be 3 Hand Traps, 3 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. I know this card's like getting reprinted, so it's like Ash Blossoms and Drolls and things. If you want to change this out for things like Drolls or Ash or whatever you want, feel free to. You can even substitute like Veilers and whatever. This is all up to you. Just run some form of Hand Traps for additional disruption, of course, and Trickstars are very consistent. Trickstars are a very contained engine, so the deck really just searches itself. You know, you have Terraforming as a light stage, which I'll get into in just a bit, and then you have Candinas and all that stuff, and you have Recursion from Lilybell, recycling things like your Lycoris. It's very self-contained, so just having additional cards in your hand that you can work with, like Hand Traps or just additional trap cards, is just very, very good for just adding more disruption to your side of the field. Alright, so that does it for the monsters. Next off, we're going to go into the spell cards. Okay, so for the spell cards, starting off, we're playing 3 copies of Trickstar Light Stage, of course, because this card searches out any of your Trickstar monsters, namely going to be like Candina. If you open with Candina, you can search out like your Lycoris and all that good stuff. Because Light Stage is not once per turn, and because it's so good at locking down your opponent's back row and things like that, we're also playing 3 copies of Terraforming just to access it that much more consistently, which means you're going to be opening with your Candina, and you can search out things like your Reincarnation, all that good stuff. So moving into the fusion spells that we play, I mentioned them earlier, but here are the ratios. We're playing 3 copies of Brilliant Fusion, and you're playing 1 copy of Instant Fusion, 1 copy of Defusion, and then the last card is just going to be Monster Reborn. So the amazing thing is about this setup is that basically you want to open with any combination of these fusion spells. You want Brilliant and either Defusion or Instant Fusion. So if you open Brilliant, you can search these out. If you open any one of these, you can search Brilliant out. And basically, Brilliant and Defusion allow you to go for the Christia field. You're going to end with like Mrs. Radiant, Arclar Christia, potentially a Lycoris, and like a Garnet on your side of the field. And with Instant Fusion, you can make Decode Talker, Crystal Wing, and a rank 4 with Lycoris on your side of the field as well. So it's an absolutely insane combo, and they're basically 2 different paths that this deck can play. And if, like, let's say game 1, you go ahead and make your Crystal Wing board, it's really hard for your opponent to break. They decide to side in something like Kaijus and stuff. You can easily just go ahead and, instead of searching your Instant Fusion for the Crystal Wing combo, just search a Defusion for Christia. Basically locks out all their Kaijus and all that good stuff. And of course, Monster Reborn is just here because Monster Reborn is broken. I love the card. So you can easily reborn like Link monsters, you can reborn your Crystal Wings, your Christias, all that good stuff. Alright, so that does it for the spell cards. Next off, we're going to go into some of the trap cards that we play. Okay, so starting off, we're playing 3 copies of Trickstar Reincarnation. Of course, I can't afford these because I'm poor, but if you have access to them, of course, you're going to be playing 3 copies of them. And then the last few cards that I'm playing are just the Solemn Brigade. So we're playing 3 copies of Strike, 1 copy of Warning, and 1 copy of Judgment. And the reason why I play these is they're essentially just free negations for you. So your combos are really... they're really streamlined, right? You just want to open up with like a Candina and access to any combination of the 2 fusion cards that I mentioned earlier. And so any of these cards are basically just additional disruption that you can put on your side of the field. And even if you don't open up like optimally, let's say you don't make Crystal Wing or Christia, you can still have this back row backing you up. And because Trickstars are such a, like I mentioned earlier, such a contained and consistent engine in and of itself, like these cards just are absolutely amazing for putting on board. And also with your Crystal Wing, you're going to be making it with your Ultima Zulkin. So if you have like any of these trap cards in your hand, you can just set it for the Zulkin effect and get your summons off that way. Although having access to Candina, it doesn't really matter because you can search Reincarnation for the trap. You can even search out things like Light Stage, and you can just set your Light Stage in order to trigger your Zulkin. So there are a lot of ways that we can just trigger our cards that way, but these are just additional options that you can go for. Alright, so yeah, that does it for the trap cards. Next off, we're just going to go into the extra deck. Okay, so for the extra deck, starting off, we're playing 1 copy of Underclock Taker. So Underclock Taker is fantastic, of course, new release in Extreme Forces, and I'm like putting into all my decks because it's so generic, it's so good. It has a down arrow and a side arrow. So in this deck, the down arrow can come up if you're trying to like make extra deck monster under it. This just puts more damage on the board and can like potentially help you run over larger monsters. But the side arrow actually comes up, and I'll show you why after I go through more of the Link monsters. I'll show you the setup of a potential field you can make. So we're also playing 1 copy of Mrs. Radiant. So Mrs. Radiant's here because of the Predaplant combo. So you're going to overlay your monsters into MX Saber Invoker, summon Thousand Blades out, Invoker and Thousand Blades makes Mrs. Radiant, and all that good stuff. Because Mrs. Radiant gives you 2 arrows, the bottom left and bottom right, and you need those 2 arrows if you're going for the Crystal Wing combo, because you need 1 spot for your Ultima Zulkin, and you need the other to summon Crystal Wing into, so that's why you need those 2 zones. And if you don't have access to that, if you do open up with, like, let's say your combos, but you like your Brilliant Fusion and like another like Instant Fusion or something like that, but you don't open up with your Predaplants to go ahead and access Mrs. Radiant, this is where the Trickstars can come into play, because you can just normal summon Candina, search Lilybell. Lilybell special summons itself from the hand, and you can go ahead and make your Trickstar Holy Angel or Holly Angel, and then she also has bottom left, bottom right arrows for you to go ahead for your combos. So that's also pretty good. Next off, we're playing one copy of Ib, the World Chalice Priestess. Now, Ib is the only monster we play that have like left and right arrows, and I'm not playing Proxy Dragon in this deck because of the fact that we have Underclock Taker, and I'm going to show you why we specifically play Ib, because her protection effect is actually pretty good in this build, because of the way that you can manipulate zones in order for her to protect your Crystal Wing. Okay, the next card that we play is going to be one copy of Decode Talker. Decode Talker is really good because you can just upgrade your Mrs. Radiant into your Decode Talker. If you go for the Crystal Wing combo and you have like Mrs. Radiant on your side of the field, it's going to decrease the attack of wind monsters on the field, so it actually decreases the attack of your Crystal Wing. And if you summon things like Tornado Dragon, it's going to decrease the attack of that as well. So you just want to get rid of it into Decode Talker. And then Decode Talker also provides targeting protection for like your back row and for your Crystal Wing and all that good stuff. So he's definitely one of the best options to go into. And then the other monsters that we play, I don't actually own them because they're just rising in price, like for no apparent reason. One copy of Firewall Dragon and one copy of Borolo Dragon. So these two cards are really good. Firewall has like the loop with Lilybell and Lycoris, so you can just infinitely like poke your opponent for game, essentially, if they have a pretty decently weak monster on the field that your Lycoris can crash into. And then Borolo Dragon's here just in case we need a monster that can swing over our opponent's monsters that are big. It can also potentially steal your opponent's monsters as well, just use it against them for additional damage and all that good stuff. So yeah, that basically does it for the Link monsters. I'll show you guys the setup of like Ib and Underclock Taker and stuff after I go through the entire extra deck. Alright. So that does it for the Link monsters. Next off for the XYZs, we're playing just 3 of them. We're playing one copy of MX Saber Invoker, one copy of Abyss Dweller, and one copy of Tornado Dragon. MX Saber Invoker is here, of course, for that Predaplant engine that summons Thousand Blades and goes into Mrs. Radiant. And then the 2 rank 4s that I ended up playing were Abyss Dweller and Tornado Dragon. Abyss Dweller just shuts down so many decks, like, you know, World Chalice and things like that, which just apparently just topped YCS. Or, sorry, not just topped, won YCS. Rising decks like Burning Abyss, once they get future support and all that stuff, it's such a versatile card. Shuts down things like True Kings or True Dracos and stuff as well. And then Tornado Dragon's just here for spell and trap removal. It's also really good to get like floodgates off the field as well if you do need it, because this deck can pump out rank 4s fairly easily and fairly consistently. So you can of course cut like Link monsters like Firewall or Borolo if you want to add more rank 4s, or you can even like side deck them if you really if you so desire. Okay, so next off, we're playing some of the Synchro monsters. So because we're playing Sea Monster of Theseus in the extra deck, so we have access to tuners. So we have Psyframe Lord Omega. So if you just make Theseus with instant fusion, you can Theseus and Synchro with like a Predaplant or even Lycoris, and you can go ahead and make Omega, and Omega can just recycle things like your Trickstar Reincarnation for like infinite monster reborns while sniping things out of your opponent's hand. We play one copy of Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. This is like the card that we summon with your Ultima Zulkin, because when you summon Zulkin, you set a card, just summon Crystal Wing straight from your extra deck, which is pretty insane actually. So it's fairly consistent, this combo. You just need 2 of the fusion cards in order to go for it. Omega is kind of like a backup. There's no real like combo with him, but you can establish some decent fields if you manipulate some of the cards and resources that you have and adjust your plays according to what your opponent does. Okay, and last but not least, we have some of the fusion monsters that we play. Of course, we're playing one copy of Gemknight Seraphinite for our Brilliant Fusion, and then we're playing one copy of Sea Monster of Theseus for our Instant Fusion. So these are 2 fusion monsters. Theseus, of course, is a level 5 tuner. So what you'll do is, if you Brilliant, you get your Seraphinite and your Instant Fusion for the Theseus. These 2 can go ahead and make your Ultima Zulkin. You set a card, you summon Crystal Wing, all that good stuff. But otherwise, Theseus can just be used to make Omega, if you so desire. And yeah, that's basically it for the fusions, and that's it for the extra deck. So one quick thing that I want to do before I end this video is show you guys the setup of why I chose to play the Underclock Taker. Underclock Taker, not only just because it's very versatile and it has a down arrow, unlike Proxy Dragon, what you can do is you can very easily summon something like a Decode Talker over here. And using your materials, you could have made your Crystal Wing, which is right here. And then what you'll do is in order to get Ib's protection onto Crystal Wing, you can't just summon her here because she has to be pointing to the Crystal Wing. So you summon your Underclock Taker right over here, and next to your Underclock Taker, you can go ahead and make your Ib. And that's just a way where you can get Ib protecting your Crystal Wing, and then Ib's also protected because she's linked to like Decode and Crystal Wing. And then Decode has something it's pointing to so that you can go ahead and protect Crystal Wing from like targeting effects too. So he's protected from like destruction and by targeting and all that good stuff. And it puts a lot of decent monsters on the field for you to work with as well. So that's pretty good. Ib also has just higher attack than Proxy Dragon, so she's a little bit more viable to work with, and she stays alive for much, much longer. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this video, so thank you all so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, please leave a like, subscribe for more Trickstar content, and leave a comment down below letting me know what I can do to improve. And until next time, take care.